create a couple guidelines for yourself. Remember, you're doing 2 sets of eyes, so put this first set up a little higher. And don't make these guidelines too dark. They're going to be erased when all is said and done. So just press lightly. And then go up about 1 ruler space. So put the bottom of the ruler on that bottom line and then just create another guideline. Nice and light up towards the top. So the length of the first eye that you do will then dictate all the other dimensions. This top line represents the top of the eye. The bottom line represents the bottom of the eye. And remember that the upper curve of the eye is always more curved than the bottom. And just lightly sketch this in. If you're happy with that, then you use this measuring technique. Put the pencil at one end of the eye, your thumb on the pencil at the other end of the eye, and just bring it down. So the distance between the eyes is the length of one eye, and put a hash mark where my thumb was. Take this distance once again, and it's the length of the other eye, and you put your hash mark where your thumb was. So this second eye then is going to be between here and here, and I just want to make sure that I try to capture the same curve for both. We will be getting to the eyebrows in a little while. But really look hard and make sure that these eyes are roughly the same size and shape. That's very important. All right. The circle graph, again, is very, very important that you choose the right size of your iris. It's a little bit big. I'm probably going to go with this one here. Part of the iris is going to be covered up by the top of the eyelid, and then the bottom of the iris is just going to barely touch the bottom of the bottom eyelid. And again, lightly draw that in, and then just slide it over, and you'll have the exact same shape iris. For both. Lightly draw that in. The pupil is dead center. You pick the right size, make sure that it is in the center. These circle graphs are a little bit transparent, which allow you to see right through them to make sure that that pupil is centered. Once again, lightly draw that in, slide over the same circle, make sure that it's in the center. And then lightly trace it in. Notice that I did not complete those because remember, you need to have the reflection. And whatever is reflected in the eye on one side is going to be reflected in the same place, in the same shape in the other eye. And those will be left white. This character is a little bit older, and so we're going to draw some, these are called crow's feet, because there's generally 3 lines as a person ages on the outside of their eye. The skin gets a little saggier out there. The eyelid line sits right up there. There's a little sag, a little bag of the eye underneath. And then we're not going to draw the eyebrow yet, but we're definitely going to locate it. And it's going to sit right here on top of the eyelids. It's very thick here and then gets a little bit more narrow and just sits right up on top there. Be very picky in these beginning stages and really look closely and make sure that everything is as it should be. As we begin to shade the eye in, remember that the iris is just going to be solid black. Don't do it all at once. And then break this iris into 8 equal sections, like pieces of pie or spokes in a wagon wheel, and it'll be easier to do it section by section instead of all at once. And keep those lines light as well, because you don't want them showing up in your final piece. Now you will use a sharp pencil point. This is why I use a mechanical pencil. to work from the outside in, one section at a time, and again using the feathering technique where I lift my pencil point up off the paper each time. Now, the bigger the eye, the more opportunity you have to create texture. And so I can go from the opposite direction as well. Use the same technique, but then play with my values. Always work away from yourself. You have greater control over the lines. And remember that there's always this little dark ring around the outside of the eye, and you want to kind of crispen that up a little bit. Again, going back the opposite direction. And just close that gap. Work slowly and meticulously. You don't want to rush this part. If you blend the iris, be very, very careful. Be very light with it. You do not want to obliterate all your hard work. But you can fill in some of those lighter areas if they're too light. And remember that large eyelids will cast a shadow. And your blending stick is perfect for that. And then redefine your edges. This line is a pretty strong fold of skin, so this line can go pretty dark as well. Again, this is a gentleman that is a little bit older, so he has crow's feet, these wrinkles on the side that grow out of the corner of the eye. He's got this looser skin underneath and some heavy folds up here. Now before we do the eyebrow, okay, we're going to just do a light, there's a 2B pencil, just lightly add some value on the skin and underneath our eyebrow, because as we develop the eyebrow we don't want any white to show through, so we're going to give it a decent number 2 light gray value. The eyebrow is done with the same technique as the interior of the iris. It's still all feathering, and generally the hair of an eyebrow goes from the nose to from the inside out, and we'll start there and then work our way out. Sometimes the lines will crisscross, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Some of the lines are short, some will be a little bit longer, and they will get longer as you move to the outside of the eyebrow. But basically just start at that ridge and work your way up. And you just keep layering it in there. Take several passes at it, and as you continue to layer lines in, have some lines just kind of are out by themselves. Again, do some crisscross, but continue to use that same technique where you're feathering from the inside out. Mechanical pencils work really well for this because the pencil point stays sharp, therefore your quality of line will remain consistent. If you use a blending stick, just use it to kind of fill in some of those white spots. But generally, if you have white spots, you can fill those in with more layers. Gonna make a little darker value down at the base. There's gonna be a lot of shadows here, as the skin and the brow are pretty thick. Just blend lightly. I'm not blending the eyebrow as much as I'm blending the skin around it. Just lay the blending stick on its side, fingers on top, thumb underneath. eyelashes, not too much on this guy. There'll be a few. Come in here. And then a few down below. Again, feathering, just a flick of the wrist. And there's a pretty big gap. There's a pretty, this skin right here is pretty significant between the eye and the eyelashes. Nothing too heavy. So we have one eye of our set of eyes almost complete, okay? But I've got enough there to where I can start to work on this, and then I can start to balance out both of them, okay? And make sure the values are the same and everything else.